Good Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to the Volquest Podcast, volquest.com, and on the Volquest YouTube channel. Go ahead and hit this like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Eric Kane with Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, and Rob Lewis. AP, it was a game where Tennessee, it was a close one in the third quarter, 28-24 at one point in the third quarter. But Tennessee finished off with 38 unanswered points and handled Missouri, the number 13 ranked defense in the country, 66 points on that defense to 24. Tennessee is 9-1, 2 road games to finish out the regular season, and Tennessee will no doubt be trying to look to win with style there as well.
Yeah, I mean, you go back on the road this week against a South Carolina team that did not score any offensive points. Last week against Florida, they hit a fake punt. If you jump on South Carolina early, Rob, I'm not going to say they're going to lay down, but I think it just takes the air out of the stadium. I expect Williams-Brice, which is fairly loud place, to be really good early. But if Tennessee can get off to a hot start, they have a chance to kind of zap that crowd right out.
It's oversimplification, but South Carolina has a really hard time scoring. Tennessee scores a ton of points. And even, if you take out the gaudy 49 points a game that they're averaging, or 47 now, in SEC play, that only drops down to 42. South Carolina averages more than a full touchdown less in SEC play than they do on the season. Just a little over 20 points compared to 28 overall. Only Kentucky, Vandy, and Missouri are worse at scoring points, and that is not a foursome you want to be a part of.
Brent, it was a senior day where Tennessee saw its quarterback score 4 total touchdowns, throw for 355 yards. It's tied in, got 2 receiving touchdowns. Dylan Sampson, a true freshman, came on and provided a spark for Tennessee in the run game in the second half. And then it was a defense that settled down a little bit. 7-3 announced total in this football game. It struggled with the quarterback run, but we knew Brady Cook was going to try to challenge that. Defensively, I thought that it rebounded pretty well, and I think the defense will have an opportunity to help its offense in terms of style, kind of winning with style the last 2 weeks of the season against offenses that just really don't have a whole lot of firepower.
They don't. I mean, South Carolina's only scored when they've hit a chunk play, basically. They have a hard time driving the length of the field on any kind of consistent basis. So Tennessee's got to make sure they don't give up something over their head, something cheap, something dumb. Austin's already mentioned special teams. You don't want to give up anything there. And Tennessee's got to find a way to affect Spencer Rattler and get to him. He doesn't move around like Cook does to look to run. He will scramble and run around, but he doesn't do that with the idea of running for yards necessarily. Tennessee was poor in their rush lanes in this game. I mean, when they got out of their rush lanes, Missouri made them pay. That's the only way they moved the football. Tennessee's got to be better about that this week. But I think the bigger thing for Tennessee is they're getting more comfortable in the secondary. They misplayed one ball, Eric. The 4th and 1 was just a terrible misplay in the back end. Other than that, they did some solid things. I really like what Brandon Turnage is doing right now. I do think that they got their 2 best corners on the field, and Slaughter and Turnage. I like what Wesley Walker did some at safety. I'll be curious to see if they rotate him in some this week. And I think this is a chance for Tennessee's defense to have a solid day because of the struggles South Carolina has.
When you're the playoff committee, Austin, are you looking at, Tennessee's calling card is its offense, don't get me wrong, and Tennessee put up 66 points and, look good doing it and all that, but you look at the team top to bottom, are you going to look at this defense and how it's been suspect against the pass at points and times when you're splitting hairs between potentially a one-loss Pac-12 team or maybe a TCU this week or whatever?
I don't know if you're looking at it that closely, but again, I think that Tennessee's, got a chance to make a statement the last 2 weeks. Ironically, I think Vanderbilt's the tougher game of the two. South Carolina just they're a struggle bus. More so, and it's not just totally offensively. I mean, defensively, they have their moments where they make a few plays, force some turnovers, but, they give up some big yards too. And, I think Tennessee's got a real chance to make a statement here with another road win. And it doesn't hurt when you've got, the marquee broadcast tandem in college football calling your game, because that means, some big eyes are going to be on this game with Fowler and Herbstreit. And, I think, when you're splitting hairs, I don't know if it gets that, finite, Eric, but at the same time, you just want to continue to play well in all phases.
Yeah, I don't want to stand on the grassy knoll here, but I'll stand on the grassy knoll a little bit. I don't know that the playoff committee, I don't know how much they're specifically watching games. I know they're supposed to watch games, but half of those guys have current jobs as acting ADs at schools around the country. So their basketball team's probably playing on Sunday or Monday. They've got events they've got to be at. So I don't think that committee is sitting down on Sunday and going, hey, let me rewatch the top 6 teams to see where the top 4 need to go. I think they look at scores, they look at box scores and stat sheets quickly, and then kind of go from there. I think this idea that they all get in a room and they watch clips of games and talk about stuff,
the all 22.
That's what's happening,
So
Yeah, and also when you're talking about something as specific as what Eric's talking about, pass defense, that kind of gets into the realm of handicapping the games. Like, oh, Tennessee's bad, defending the pass, so they wouldn't match up well with Ohio State. I don't think that's the committee's job, and to go at it that way. I think what Hubbard is saying, to evaluate the body of work, compare and contrast. Was Tennessee's win over LSU better than Michigan's win over Penn State, and why or why not?
So what we've learned here is Hubbs is a shot from the front guy. Was it the Cubans, the CIA? Was it?
Listen, all I said was I'm not a
Lyndon Baines Johnson. Who did you have?
AP, don't go down that road. All I'm saying is I'm not saying it's a conspiracy here. I'm saying the idea and the notion that these committee guys are sitting and watching and breaking down nuances of games to know. I mean, they don't know how all these teams play. They don't have time to do that because they all have full-time jobs managing athletic departments, many of them. Now you got a couple of retired coaches and some people in there, but they're not sitting around doing all of that stuff that that some people think that they're doing on the committee. That's the point I was making.
Did we actually land on the moon, and is the Earth flat?
The Earth is not flat, and they landed on the moon.
In a beautiful slice of irony as it relates to conspiracy theories, and it's specific to Tennessee fans, the SEC office is always against Tennessee, always for Alabama. All those, black helicopter Vol fans are going to have Big Bad Greg Sankey in their corner here in a couple of weeks, wanting to get 2 playoff checks. So they're going to have to make their peace with it.
The best part of all of this is that Eric Kane doesn't even know what the grassy knoll is.
I know the conspiracy theories out there for, Kennedy and all that type of
stuff.
Oh,
my goodness.
I went to school, #2 degrees. So I know a thing or two about American history. I guess what I'm just trying to get at here is I'm trying to wonder, Brent says, what's going to be the theme of the week for
it's SC. It's Southern Cal.
Yeah. But I'm trying to sit here and think, okay, so, what made TCU worse than a 1-loss Alabama team the week before, but then better than a 1-loss team that beat that 1-loss team in Tennessee the week next? I'm trying to figure out what are they valuing each week to week to week? I think we all know that they're all going to be gung-ho about Southern Cal this week for sure. Because you're not going to be that way for LSU, because the only way LSU is going to get in is they run the table and beat Georgia. So, in talking about splitting hairs and everything, it's kind of well, what are you looking for? What should we be looking for tomorrow or tonight whenever the playoff rankings come out?
Well, a couple of things on the TCU deal. One, that was going into your second poll, right? And you had the number 1 team lose after week 1 in Tennessee. So that was a natural fall, right? That was the easy thing. They were going to drop them, and you bump up the unbeaten team, because there was some criticism about whether or not TCU should have been ahead of Alabama as a 1-loss team. Tennessee doesn't play well. They lose to Georgia. There's your opportunity to make that move. Did TCU, if the committee members were watching that game against Texas, they probably came away going, you know what, TCU's better on defense than I thought. That's not I thought that was a Big 12 league that scored 50 points a game, and it was, 52-50 were the final. But TCU's defense looked better. So they probably helped themselves in that way to those people who actually watched the game. But the point is, I don't think they get into those finite details with some of that stuff. Sometimes you have movement just to have movement. This week, there's no possibility of movement in the top 4. Georgia's not falling, right? Ohio State's not falling. TCU's not falling. Michigan's not falling. So where's the movement take place? Well, the narrative, in my opinion, with what is released by the College Football Playoff Committee is going to be about conference champions, and you've got a potential 1-loss conference champion in the Pac-12 in USC That's why they'll go to 6, and that's why they will be the school that everybody is talking about when they sit on on the panel and start talking about the rankings later tonight.
And if that's the case, Hubs, my issue would be with that would be that I think we all agree that are they going to give North Carolina or Clemson, a potential one-loss ACC champ, the same treatment? Because that's basically what you're going to end up with here possibly. So if let's say they love up Southern Cal and they're talking about that the whole time, and then Southern Cal loses and then Tennessee ends up in, Clemson and North Carolina are going to go, wait, I thought the whole point of the Clemson or the Southern Cal argument was one loss conference champ. What are we?
But they can qualify that, and they will qualify that by saying if Southern Cal's a one-loss conference champ, they will have beaten a ranked UCLA team, right? They will have beaten a ranked Notre Dame team. They will have beaten a ranked Oregon or Utah team in the conference championship. So there's your qualifier versus one-loss Pac-12 versus one-loss ACC will be strength of schedule based on who Southern Cal plays at the end. It's like stats, right? You can take a stat and turn it into whatever you want, right? You can take a stat and you can go rob certain down and distances, and you can make South Carolina's defense look good, right? I mean,
I don't know if I could, Hubbard, but maybe you could.
Missouri's defense top 4 in the country or in the conference a week ago. But if you looked at that, you went, hey, they're really playing by who was a very good offensive football team. My point is you can take those things and kind of move it and manipulate that to kind of fit into the narrative that works at this point. And right now, I think there's West Coast engagement in the Pac-12. That's why you heard all the Oregon talk last week, but with them out of the way now. I think you'll see them move that needle towards Southern Cal. We'll see how Southern Cal handles it the next 3 weeks.
Guys, I can't believe early in the week here, one of the bigger talking points on, from national media members or social media or whatever there was even a question asked about it in Josh Heupel's press conference on Monday, was the fact that Tennessee scored there towards the end. I mean, Rob, is this as black and white as I'm making it out to be, where it might not make a difference, but you're going to look as good as you possibly can in the eyes of the playoff committee. You're trying to get a college football playoff spot. You're going to go score when the ball's on the 2-yard line. USC scored with 36 seconds left against a 1-win Colorado team on Friday. I'm not hearing anything about that team. I mean, this is not a big deal, is it?
No, I don't think it's a big deal, but that USC, that happened at probably 1:30 in the morning, East Coast time, and
on a Friday with nobody watching.
And only degenerate gamblers like Eric Kane, who had the Trojans, knows the Trojans needed that one to cover, or even aware of it. But Tennessee, middle of the day, Saturday afternoon, national television. You got Rick Neuheisel, almost getting all lathered up about it on the air. I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, I think it's the reality of college football these days. It goes back to what Hubbard's talking about when there's such a huge prize out there and it's going to be given out on a subjective process by people who are not watching these games in real time. I don't blame Josh Heupel at all.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to know that it was 28, or most of the committee members are not going to know it was 28-24 at one point in the third quarter, right? But Austin, something you said after the game, it might be, well, Tennessee, since the loss in Athens, Tennessee's outscored opponents the last 3 weeks of the season 342-5, or whatever the case may be. Like, that might be a stat that would weigh heavily for Tennessee when going in that last week of the rankings.
Breaking. Eric Kane's got Tennessee scoring over 100 the next 2 weeks.
It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the way you phrase things, word things, sell. I mean, what was it? Shane Beamer last year or earlier this year, whatever it was, he was selling that that South Carolina had won the fourth quarter in 8 of their last 9 games or whatever. It didn't matter that they lost 8 of those 9 games.
Rob, that is so Butch Jones, isn't it?
Again, it's all selling. It's all about phrasing, how you sell things. So I mean, if you're sitting there and you're trying to sell Tennessee's, post Georgia close, you want to be able to say Tennessee outscored them 180-60.
Yeah. Well, again, the best thing, the reason Tennessee's in the conversation about the college football playoff is not just their record, but how they've achieved that record. And they've achieved that record through their offense. Big play offense. Everybody was waxing poetically about how great the offense was heading into Georgia, the most unstoppable offense in college football. That's what Tennessee's selling point is, right? That's what's captivating about Tennessee is their offense and what they do on the offensive side of the ball. So, yeah, you better be there. On the flip, you better score a bunch of points, and you got to do whatever you can to be impressive. And your offense is what impresses people. Flip side, if you're a team that's giving up 10 points a game, are you gonna do everything you can not to give up a cheap one in the fourth quarter to make that look like your defense didn't play particularly well? Do you play your starters longer that way? If you're a team whose calling card was defense, now we don't have one of those in the playoff right now, and that's not the way the college football game is played these days. But my point is, you've got to play to your strengths from a perception standpoint to impress community members, and for Tennessee, that's scoring points.
What do you guys want to see from Tennessee these last 2 weeks? Because Tennessee's going to be, it's already a 3-touchdown favorite on the road for South Carolina. Tennessee will be about a 28-point favorites likely at Vanderbilt. They should have some easy wins here. What do you need to see, Austin, from Tennessee the next 2 weeks as they close out the year?
More Dylan Sampson. I mean, I'd love to see, Tennessee continue to expand. I like Squirrel White having more of a role. I like Dylan Sampson having more of a role. In these type games, they should, because Tennessee should be able to take care of business. So I like Tennessee just to continue doing what they are doing and have done all year minus the Georgia game. And that's, play their brand of football, score points, be opportunistic on defense. It feels like to me Tennessee's defense has grown up quite a bit. I mean, I know they still give up a few plays. Everybody gives up plays. But it feels like they're more settled at corner, more settled at linebacker, and continuing to get decent play along the defensive line.
Rob, do you need to see anything from Tennessee in order to maybe help their case moving forward for the college football playoff rankings, or just against two inferior opponents, you want to see something you haven't seen from Tennessee yet?
I think these are two really bad football teams. I think Tennessee, if Josh wants to, they can score in the 60s or 70s these next 2 weeks, to me. But I think these are foregone conclusions, blowouts, and the case for the college football playoff is going to. I think that's going to depend on what happens with Michigan, what happens with USC. What I want to see, as somebody that's followed his team, I want to see Jalen Hyatt put the single season touchdown record at a place that is untouchable. I mean, he could easily get 6 touchdowns in these next two or more. I mean, Vanderbilt has the worst.
Remember, bowl games count too, though. So I mean,
bowl game or 2 playoff games or what?
Yeah.
But, I mean, Vanderbilt is 130th in the nation in pass defense. There could be some fireworks there.
2 playoff games, Rob, and I'm taking you to Disneyland, my friend.
But I'd like to see. I mean, Hyatt could end up with 22, 23 touchdowns. I'd like to see that, and I would like to see him in New York. I mean, I think we all are. I mean, big fan of that kid. What he's been through, his story, his journey to get to this point is remarkable. I mean, if he could cap that with Tennessee's first ever Heisman Trophy, I mean, that's fantasy land type stuff right there.
Well, Brent, he'll be in New York. It's just a matter of, right now he's the second odds-on favorite behind C.J. Stroud. I mean, unless C.J. Stroud just collapses, might not have an opportunity to win this thing, but he will be in New York without a doubt.
Yeah, which is a great story within itself.
Yeah.
And, it's a credit to what he's accomplished and what he's gone about and doing and the work he's put in and the marriage that's been perfect for him and Josh Heupel, which, didn't seem to be the case when he was here in the spring and Josh Heupel first, took him out to the practice field and went through spring practice. But it's obviously worked out very well. And Hendon Hooker has thrived in this system. He's gained his confidence back and he's playing really well. Big picture for me, Eric, to answer your question, is Tennessee slamming the door in these 2 games early and immediately. If you want to talk about impressing committees and those types of things, I'm not saying Tennessee, it's a detriment that it worked against Tennessee, the Missouri game, but don't be in a 1-score game, 10 minutes to go in the third quarter against these 2 teams. Go out and slam the door early and in the football game. and be a dominant, impressive football team right out of the gate. I think that's what Tennessee can show. Now, as someone who covers the team on a daily basis, still, some of the growth and development of some of these young guys, right, continue to move with the Dylan Sampsons, Turnage getting better, more Joshua Joseph, more James Pierce. Let's see some of those guys when the opportunity presents itself. As someone who covers them every day, that's the things I'm looking for. But if you're talking about impressing the committee, end it early. I mean, this game was 35-0 last year against South Carolina. It was over before it ever got started. Can Tennessee go out and end this game before it ever gets underway? Something they didn't really do against Missouri. They had a chance to, but they didn't do that against Missouri until they went on that basketball run in the third quarter.
I think something I want to see, and this is just selfishly, and again, Tennessee might not have been wanting to do this the entire season, but it's been this way the last 5-6 games. I hate offensive line rotations. Now, J.J. Crawford might have stayed in there and played the whole game if he didn't get his tail whipped by Isaiah McGuire the entire first half. And then Mincy came in and he got planted a few times as well. Isaiah McGuire is a really good player. I want to see somebody. I mean, it's worked for Tennessee. You got the number one team in the country, or number one offense in the country. But I hate rotating offensive linemen. So I want to see that left tackle. I want to see someone, and it's not going to happen, but I want to see someone say, hey, this is my spot. But
that's your pet peeve. That's your pet peeve.
It's one of my football pet peeves, rotating offensive linemen. It's when Jeremy Pruitt was here during that Georgia State game. It's why he lost. Good God. Why are you rotating an offensive lineman that's in JV football,
Which is interesting because Glenn Ellerby likes to rotate offensive linemen. They did it at Central Florida because of their tempo. They felt like in the second quarter, some of those big linemen were gassed a little bit with the fast start in the first quarter. So they would play ultimately 6 or 7 offensive linemen regularly in a game when they were down there. I don't know if Tennessee will ever get to that point at Tennessee, but that's something that they felt like they needed to do with the tempo down there because they felt like it played to their advantage with some of those guys.
I don't know. We talked to Ramon Foster on the Rocky Top Rewind the other night, and in conversation that I've had with him in the past about that, he said, no, this isn't defensive line. You don't do that on the offensive line. You don't do that at any level. So that's just me. I hate that. But again, you had to on Saturday because, I mean, what you were getting at left tackle was just not good enough. Moving forward,
wouldn't you like to have done this podcast with Eric when Philip Fulmer said, hey, this week, this tackle's going to guard for matchup? We're going to move the center out to tackle this week because it's a better matchup for us.
No, I have no issue with that. Like the versatility on the offensive line, I think is a plus. What I hate is, all right, we're going to go. Here's an example. Kentucky game 2020. I know it didn't end well, but you go down with Javonte Spraggins and Jerome Carvin as your guards, and you go down that first play of the second, or that first drive of the second half, 75 yards, you score a touchdown or whatever. And then you come out the next series and you have another guard in there for Jerome Carvin. It's like, what are you doing? That makes no sense to me. I mean, for matchup purposes, if you have a guy that's, Cade Mays that can go in there and say tackle this week, guard this week, I don't have an issue with that. That's just one of my pet peeves for football. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there, but anyway, when you're looking at recruiting,
sleep, Kane.
Sorry, Austin. I'll wake you up here. Let's talk recruiting. Tennessee trying to close out this class of 23. Last game at Neyland Stadium to have kids on campus for game day atmosphere. They'll have some more official visitors in December. Khalifa Keith, former Kentucky running back commits, now looking like Tennessee's in a real good spot here.
Yeah, Tennessee been trending there for several weeks. South Carolina tried to take a swing, but never got over there. Credit Jerry Mack. He's worked that one really hard. And Tennessee, sees a bigger tailback. He's 6 foot. I know it says all of his profiles say like 6'2". He's really not. He's 6 foot, but he's 230 pounds. That's 20 pounds bigger than anybody on the roster. And, they need a bigger bodied back that can get those tough 2 and 3 yards. Laneith Whitehead, could have been that, but he can't stay healthy. And so at this point, you just can't depend on him. Now, maybe he comes back and he surprises and he stays healthy. But, I think Tennessee needs a bigger back. And I expect them to also look into the transfer portal. And then we'll see what else.
What about David Hobbs and Arian Carter, 2 other guys that get mentioned a lot in terms of trying to close out this class?
Yeah, I think for Hobbs, it's Tennessee, Georgia. I've heard nothing to suggest Tennessee is now trailing Georgia. I know Georgia felt good about their their visit with him, he had glowing remarks and basically admitted, Georgia was 3 heading into that visit and kind of supplanted Alabama. I think Alabama's now 3 or out, however you want to look at it. It's Tennessee, Georgia, but I still feel like Tennessee's in a fairly good spot there with what do we got? 10 days to go before he pulls the trigger next Friday.
2024s. A lot of in-state guys have been on campus several times. When could the next movement be for the class of 2024 in terms of this class already with 4 commits?
Yeah, I mean, I could see somebody pulling the trigger in December. We'll see. I mean, there have been a few that, had talked about pulling the trigger and then they backed off, and that stuff happens. I mean, that's recruiting 22s, 23s, 24s, 25s. There's always someone who's close to pulling the trigger, and then they kind of calm down and come off visit highs and those type of things. But I think December would be a possible situation there, and if not then I would look at February. January is more of a dead month, or more of a month focused on that specific class you're in, which would be the 23s.
And something me and Brent, and actually I think you were on when we talked about this in terms of the transfer portal. You're gonna have to go out and add to this class, tight end especially. You've got to have. You see how valuable Princeton fan Jacob Warren are on this offense, and why you never go 4 wide receiver sets. And Ethan Davis is in this class, and I think he could end up being a good player. But you need to go out and get an experienced guy to play tight end. I feel like in the transfer portal, maybe a running back, maybe some other players, of course, but a tight end is what they're going to be targeting for sure.
Yeah, and don't miss Princeton fan just because of the versatility. I mean, he was, he did more than just play tight end, and or does more. And it's not like his career's over yet, but he does more than just play tight end. And but I think tight end will be an area where they go, and depending on what Jacob Warren does, it could be going and getting 1, it could be going and getting 2 tight ends out of the portal. Then outside of that, tackle, defensive line, maybe linebacker, depending on where you feel like you're at, and then kind of a best available. I do think that running back will be a need in the portal, especially if there's a guy, like a really top-end player. I think you'll see Tennessee go pretty hard at one of those.
So we talk football, talking recruiting. Rob, how was your trip to Bridgestone Arena the other day?
Anytime that when football and basketball season overlap and the 2 teams you cover both score the exact same amount of points, it's been a bad weekend for somebody.
I mean, no one should freak out over a loss in November.
No,
all right, that's the difference in football and basketball. But God, that was an ugly, ugly thing to watch.
It was brutal. I mean, they played terrible. I don't know that I've seen Coach Barnes as angry after a game, and it was because he just felt his kids didn't bring it. It wasn't because they couldn't throw it in the ocean. It was, he didn't feel like. And me and Brent talked about this yesterday. He didn't come out and say all these things, but having been around him for going on 8 years now, I don't feel like he felt like his team respected the opponent. I think his kids saw that Colorado had gone to Grambling, of all places, and lost. I guess on 2 days before, they had 1 day to prepare. This really felt like a situation where Tennessee felt like they could show up and win, and quickly found out that wasn't going to be the case. And I don't, I've seen people losing their minds on the board about it. I mean, I think November basketball means absolutely almost nothing, except for maybe if you get a good win or 2, it might bump you up a seed line in March. But college basketball is a marathon. Tennessee shot it as bad as they could shoot it yesterday. We're not good on defense. Rick's got some things to figure out rotation wise. I mean, I think more roles than rotation wise. Like who should be taking 10 or 12 shots a game, this, that, and the other. And I think he's figuring that out. And I think these next couple of weeks will be important for that. But big picture, just, scrub that one yesterday. It was ugly. Sorry for people that wasted their money to go watch that. But big picture wise, that I think it's pretty meaningless.
Well,
Rob, what does Rick do at the point guard spot?
I don't know.
Came out and said, Zakai, you're going to the bench. The love affair there was not a love affair. Rick went from I really love this team to I'm really mad at this team and I'm going to bench the point guard. So who do they play? Who does he play at point guard Wednesday night to start the game?
He's going to play Tyreek Key there, but it's not it. I would just call Tyreek Key the primary ball handler as opposed to the point guard because it's just going to look different. I mean, and I think that's okay when you got guys like Santiago and Josiah on the court with him, when you got three guys that can run things, that can initiate things. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is Zakai Ziegler is their only – I don't know about only. I'd call B.J. Edwards a point guard too, but he's not ready yet. But Zakai is their best point guard on the roster, and it's not close. And right now his head coach is mad at him. and they're going to have to work through some things.
And Zakai is getting a lesson in what it's like to truly be the point guard for Tennessee, right? I mean, he was the point guard in a rotation last year, but Kennedy Chandler was the guy that Rick Barnes would be mad at from one game to the next game because he's hard on point guards. And Ziegler's getting his first indoctrination to that in an ugly way. Way. I mean, after what happened Sunday.
Hubbard playing point guard for Rick Barnes is like being AP's travel agent. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, you got a lot of responsibilities. You got somebody breathing down your neck, all the time about, private jet hours and tea times and eat fast passes. There's a lot of similarities there. But
Disney World, Disneyland, which one this
what's
weekend?
Harder, being his travel agent or his tailor? Which is tougher right now?
I don't know.
AP, which is harder?
Hey, that house is clean though, Brent.
Which is harder, AP?
They got his measurement.
Whoa! AP's speechless.
They got his measurements on file at Peter Millar. He doesn't. He just needs to go for a little adjustment here and there.
What do you want me to say, man? I mean, I'd give it out.
You beat me to it, Brent.
I got to be willing to take it when you dish it back. I give it out. It's like Brandon Turner was busting my chops on Monday after he walked by, and I said, "Man, where are you going?" He's like, "I'm going to Thornton." I said, "Don't you go to the jug machines? I watched you drop 2 steps today." And so he busted on me back. So you got to be willing to have a good give and take.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In all seriousness, though, man, I think Zakai will be back in the starting lineup or at some. And if he's not, the minutes will be about the same. I mean, Rick can't help himself, and Zakai's the best that they've got, and I think he and the rest of the team will be better from yesterday. I would not want to be in that film session Monday afternoon.
Well, now what you root for is Colorado to go have a good year, and that way in March, everybody was like, okay, they lost to Colorado, but Colorado's a tournament team, not Colorado ended 12-27.
Rob, what's up with Uros? What's that injury situation look like?
Rick was dismissive of it on Sunday afternoon. Said turned ankle, high ankle. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play against Florida Gulf Coast on Wednesday, or maybe even takes it easy until they go to the Bahamas. But Rick didn't indicate like it was anything long term.
Is it more like a Jackson Lampley injury or
Jackson Lampley? That you need to get that one to the point, AP, where it turns into something like Save Ferris, like from Ferris Bueller. Save Jackson.
Crossover season is in full effect. So are the jokes, so are the laughs here on the Volquest Podcast. Tennessee finishing off the regular season this Saturday at South Carolina, then Vanderbilt. And, of course, college basketball back in action right now. Had a first loss of the season to Colorado at Bridgestone Arena on Sunday, but back in action against Florida Gulf Coast coming up tomorrow night at TBA. Hey, we'll have the Mailbag Podcast coming up on Thursday. Get in all those questions. We'll have the thread pinned at the top of the board, so all your questions get in there for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. That is coming up on Thursday. For Rob Lewis, Austin Price, and Brent Hubbs, I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us here today on the Volquest Podcast.